When talking about NBA basketball in the 1980s, every discussion begins and ends with the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics. The Lakers, led by their transcendent point guard Magic Johnson, put together the most dominant decade of basketball the NBA had seen since the days of Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics, as from 1980 to 1989, Los Angeles added an absurd 5 championship banners to their rafters. Meanwhile, the Celtics, led by an equally transcendent star in Larry Bird, won 3 out of the 5 other championships won in that 10-year stretch. Yes, the Lakers and Celtics were both dominant and didn't like each other, which led to the greatest team rivalry the league has ever seen. But the thing is, this team rivalry was nothing compared to the individual war waged between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. The seeds of this rivalry were planted early, as the two stars would face off in a championship matchup before they had ever set foot on an NBA basketball court, as the 1979 NCAA championship gave us the first strike in a long-standing fight, with Magic's Michigan State Spartans defeating Bird's Indiana State Sycamores in the most anticipated game that college basketball has ever seen. From there, Magic and Larry would go on to win 3 MVPs and finish in the discussion of the greatest players to ever live. And the Magic vs. Bird rivalry still stands as the greatest individual rivalry the league has ever witnessed. Which brings us to our what if scenario for today. What if we could go back in time, grab Magic and Bird before they were drafted, and watch as they played out their careers starting in the 2004 draft? Would they maintain their dominance? Would their rivalry play out the same way in this modern era of basketball? Well, we're about to find out. So how are you guys doing? My name is Mike, and I've gotta say, I've spent over 100+ hours making this video. It's basically dominated my life for the last few weeks. So if you notice, I'm not putting multiple ads on here. I'm not doing a sponsorship. All I ask is if you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe. I mean, come on, you get more awesome what if videos like this. And speaking of what ifs, every single what if I'm done is going to be in the description. So if you want to see more after this, go check them out. But for now, let's rewrite history and jump into the 2004 NBA draft. With the first overall pick, the Orlando Magic choose Magic Johnson instead of Dwight, which is awesome for reasons that are pretty obvious. Hint, Magic is now playing for the Magic. Picking second, the Charlotte Bobcats do what they've always done, and they make a poor draft selection, which means they take former college National Player of the Year Emeka Okafor. This pick will be remembered as one of the worst of all time, because at number 3, the Bulls luck into the legend himself, Larry Bird, marking the second time in their history where the Chicago Bulls land a future NBA Hall of Famer with the 3rd pick in the draft. At the 4 spot, Dwight Howard joins the Clippers and tears his ACL while walking up to shake David Stern's hand. Just kidding. For once, the Clippers draft a big man who does not get seriously injured almost immediately. Which brings us to the start of the 2005 season. A season that only sees minor changes, as the Clippers gain 5 wins with Dwight Howard replacing Chris Kaman as the team's starting center. The Magic, with Magic Johnson putting up a monster rookie year, only gain 4 wins and still finish out of the playoffs because their team is just that off. As for the Chicago Bulls, well, they gain 5 wins but are still placed as the 4th seed in the East, despite winning 8 more games than the Celtics, because in 2005, the division winners were guaranteed the top 3 seeds in the playoffs. In the playoffs, the Bulls take on a Cavaliers squad led by a young LeBron James. This will be the first meaningful matchup between LeBron and Larry, and although LeBron has a great series, Larry plays just as well, and the Bulls simply have a better team. Chicago cruises past the Cavs in 5 games before falling to the top-seeded Miami Heat, a team led by another young star in Dwayne Wade. From there, history repeats itself, as San Antonio still ends up winning the 2005 NBA championship. As for the awards this season, Steve Nash still takes home MVP, the first-team All-NBA selections remain the same, but Larry Bird wins Rookie of the Year over the previous winner Emeka Okafor. This brings us to the 2005 NBA draft. During the season, the Charlotte Bobcats lost an extra game, which means they now find themselves picking ahead of New Orleans. This means
the Charlotte Bobcats select Chris Paul from Wake Forest University.
Yes, Chris Paul is now a Bobcat in what will be remembered as undoubtedly the greatest moment in Charlotte throughout Bobcats history. The Hornets, who only wanted CP3 or Darren Williams, now are forced to take Martell Webster. Ouch. Wrapping up the draft, Raymond Felton is selected by Portland, and we move on to the 2006 NBA season, where we see that the most improved team is somewhat of a surprise, as Chris Paul proves to be a huge improvement over Felton and leads the Bobcats to 7 more wins. The Bulls take a step back from last season, but still win 6 more games while grabbing the 5th seed in the East, as Larry Bird shines, but the team does miss the scoring brought by Ben Gordon. As for Orlando, well, Magic has an up and down season as he struggles to find a rhythm while missing more than half the year with injuries. The Magic end up losing 2 more games as the loss of Dwight Howard begins to show itself as a glaring problem. The 2006 playoffs are not too interesting, as right now we are still in the early stages of Magic and Bird's careers, and their teams still have a lot of work to do to build championship rosters around these 2 players. Meanwhile, fellow young stars LeBron James and Dwayne Wade find themselves with much more successful 2006 campaigns. The 2 end up battling it out in the Eastern Conference Finals, with Wade's Heat winning both that series and the NBA championship. Nash again repeats as MVP, CP3 is the Rookie of the Year, and we move on to the 2006 draft. The Atlanta Hawks managed to lose a few more games and jump the Bulls, who own the Knicks pick, for the 2nd pick in the draft. And so they select Tyrus Thomas, the guy the Bulls front office really wanted to take with their pick, which means
The Chicago Bulls select LaMarcus Aldridge from the University of Texas.
Yup, the Bulls take LaMarcus Aldridge and are forced to keep him because they can no longer trade him to the Blazers for Tyrus Thomas, which in essence means that the Hawks end up saving Chicago from its own stupidity. The only other significant differences in this year's draft are that the Celtics end up selecting Brandon Roy, and Rudy Gay ends up going to Charlotte after CP3 leads the team to more wins and saves them from their own stupid mistake in drafting the homeless man with 1 leg and a drinking problems version of Larry Bird in Adam Morrison. This also means Shane Battier stays in Houston. The remainder of the summer of 06 also brings us our first impactful trade, as unfortunately the Bulls still sign Ben Wallace to a huge contract in free agency and look to trade away Tyson Chandler. They need a shooting guard to replace Ben Gordon, and looking at the rest of the NBA, Orlando needs a center to replace Dwight and now can move Jameer because they have Magic. Meanwhile, the Hawks now need a point guard desperately as they don't have Chris Paul. So just like in the original 2006 offseason, the Bulls trade Tyson Chandler for J.R. Smith. Unlike the original offseason, the Bulls now keep JR because they need him, and this time the Magic get Chandler while the Hornets end up with Jameer. In the 2007 season, the Bobcats, Clippers, Magic, and Bulls all see huge improvements, and yes, for the first time in his career, Magic Johnson leads his team to the playoffs with help from Tyson Chandler. But the real story this year is the emergence of Larry Joe Bird. Again, while playing with a more talented roster than Magic, Bird leads Chicago to the #1 overall seed in the East and is rewarded for his outstanding play with his first selection to the All-NBA first team, which means for the first time in their careers, Magic and Bird meet in the NBA playoffs. However, unlike their Lakers-Celtics NBA Finals battles of old, the 2 find themselves squaring off in the 2nd round, and it's not even close, as Chicago runs away with the series in 5 games. After this series, the media begins to build a rivalry between Larry and another star young player. And no, that star is not Magic, instead it's LeBron James, who meets Larry in the Eastern Conference Finals. The series is close, but at the end of the day, LeBron proves to be just too much, at least for now, and the Cavaliers end up winning the Eastern Conference Finals before being swept by the Spurs in the NBA Finals. Again, Dirk wins the MVP, Brandon Roy wins the Rookie of the Year, but on the Celtics, and we're at the 2007 NBA draft. Now, in this draft, the Sonics end up with the first pick, but they still take Kevin Durant, as reports have actually shown that they would have taken him no matter what. Odin goes to the Grizzlies, the Blazers replace LaMarcus Aldridge with Al Horford, and the Celtics still trade the 4th pick for Ray Allen, but this time they send Mike Conley to the Sonics, which leads us to the 2008 season, which is very similar to 2007, though this time it is Magic Johnson who finds more success than Bird, as Orlando begins to gel while Chicago struggles. The Magic finish as the 2 seed in the East, and Magic is named to his first All-NBA first team selection. He continues his success in the playoffs, but his run is cut short by a juggernaut of a Boston Celtics team. team. The Celtics go on to win the championship. Kobe is still MVP, Durant is still Rookie of the Year, and we continue our story with the 2008 NBA draft. In this draft, it's the Clippers who luck into a huge jump in the draft lottery, and they are rewarded with 4 years of Derrick Rose and several more years of heartbreak and disappointment. Then, for the first time in a long time, the New York Knicks actually make a good pick because Kevin Love falls into their lap at number 5. From there, Eric Gordon goes to the Grizzlies, Danilo Gallinari goes to the Hornets, and we're moving along to the 2009 season, where we're going to take a break from Magic and Larry because the Bulls are still too young to be real title contenders, and the Magic fall apart when Tyson Chandler misses half the year with injuries. So let's talk about this year's feel-good story. The awesome year put together by the Charlotte Bobcats. In 2009, Chris Paul has one of the best seasons ever produced by a point guard in league history as he averages 23 points, 11 assists, and 3 steals while producing a monster 30 PER at just 23 years old. Wow. Other than the Bobcats, the NBA remains largely the same. The Lakers earn some more hardware, LeBron wins his first MVP, and Derrick Rose is the Rookie of the Year on the Clippers. But don't worry, we may have only seen small changes so far, but changes are coming, and they're coming fast. As heading into the 2009 draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder have already gained the reputation as the NBA's most promising young team. Starting Mike Conley, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and Serge Ibaka, the Thunder seem destined for greatness if only they could fill their hole at the center position. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bulls have built a promising young team themselves, led by Larry Bird, Luol Deng, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Joakim Noah. But they need a point guard to lead them to the promised land with the loss of Derrick Rose. And so the two teams make a logical deal. The Bulls send Joakim Noah, whose value at the time was sky high, and their number 21 pick to the Thunder for the number 6 pick, which they then use to take
Stephen Curry from Davidson College.
Oh yeah, things just got very interesting as Steph Curry joins Bird and Aldridge to create an absurdly talented big three in Chicago. I told you changes are coming fast, and you can see that the Timberwolves end up replacing Kevin Love with Blake Griffin. The Warriors replace Curry with James Harden, and DeMar DeRozan joins Derrick Rose and Dwight Howard on the Clippers. Capping off this offseason, the Bulls make a move and acquire Marcus Camby from the Clippers to replace Joakim Noah, and now let's jump to the beginning of another year of basketball. Now, before we talk about the new look Bulls in the 2010 season, I want to tell you a little story about a man named Magic Johnson. It's a sad story, really, as at this point in his career, in season number 6 with the Lakers, Magic would already have won his 3rd NBA championship. Now, playing for Orlando, the Magic underachieve yet again, despite Magic himself earning a first-team All-NBA selection, as Tyson Chandler again misses half the year with injuries. And so, Magic begins to complain to the media, and rumblings of a trade begin to be heard. Now, back to the Bulls, as with a rookie Steph Curry not missing a beat, Chicago improves on their original 2010 season with a staggering 16 extra wins and finishes as the number 2 seed in the East. They're easily the most fun team to watch in basketball. Curry wins Rookie of the Year, Aldridge begins to come into his own and averages 18 a game, and of course, Larry Bird does what Larry Legend is supposed to do. Night in and night out, he puts fans in awe with his incredible court vision and scoring ability. When it's all said and done, Larry wins his first MVP over LeBron, and in the playoffs, Bird stays hot and leads the Bulls to a throttling of the Magic in the second round. Meanwhile, Cleveland absolutely chokes in their second round matchup with the Celtics, giving the Bulls an easier than expected Eastern Conference Finals matchup against Boston, which they win in 6 games. This means for the first time in his career, Larry Bird reaches the NBA Finals. Remember, while Magic had already won 3 rings in 6 seasons with the Lakers at this point, Bird himself had already picked up 2 rings with the Celtics. Now, in search of his first ring in this new NBA, Bird tries his best to outduel Kobe, but the Black Mamba is just too much here. The Lakers win their 2nd straight championship, and Chicago heads home with a new fire lit in their hearts. A fire to return to the finals and to take care of unfinished business. But first, we have the 2010 NBA draft. In this draft, Golden State manages to quickly fill the void left by Curry, as with the number 1 pick,
The Golden State Warriors select John Wall from the University of Kentucky.
James Harden and John Wall instead of Steph Curry and Ekpe Udoh. Warriors fans, I know you love Steph, but I think you came out of these two drafts doing just fine. Moving a few spots down, Detroit now picks 5th, and Cousins ends up in Detroit, where he will never have to learn what it means to play for an owner who wants you to play 4-on-5 on defense because it's a revolutionary idea to always leave one man on offense to cherry pick. Kings fans, again, I'm just so sorry. The Bulls do make one move, signing a wily vet by the name of Shaquille O'Neal, which brings us to the 2011 season. In this season, the Nuggets and Knicks still make the trade for Carmelo Anthony, but this time the Knicks are able to keep Kevin Love as Denver is backed into a corner due to Melo's trade demands. As for the actual 2011 season, well, let's just say the Chicago Bulls turn a few heads. With an otherworldly starting lineup of Steph Curry, Kyle Korver, Larry Bird, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Shaquille O'Neal, Chicago almost sets the NBA record for wins in a season and finishes the year with 71 wins. This time, Larry Bird steals the MVP away from Derrick Rose, as Rose no longer plays for a championship contender. Still though, the duo of D Rose and Dwight helps the Clippers to plenty of extra wins, as they end up taking the 6th seed in the West. And with the rise of Derrick Rose and the incredible season of the Chicago Bulls, you would think the NBA had enough storylines this year. This is not the case, as the league's top 2 point guards are very unhappy and let everyone around them know about it. Yes, the Bobcats end up winning 14 more games than they had originally, but they still are just 5th in the East, and Chris Paul knows that with this roster, Charlotte will never compete with the Bulls. As for Magic Johnson, well, yet again his Orlando squad finishes with a disappointing record while Magic himself finishes as a first-team All-NBA selection. And yet again, Magic loses to Larry Bird's Chicago Bulls in the 2nd round of the playoffs, which means we can definitely expect something to happen in the offseason that will rock the NBA to its soul. As for this season, well, this turns out to be the year of the Bull. After taking care of Magic, Chicago has no problem finishing off a Miami Heat team whose big three has not yet reached its full potential. And so the Bulls return to the NBA Finals, this time playing the Dallas Mavericks and a red-hot Dirk Nowitzki. But unfortunately for Dirk, he's just no match for a Chicago team that is absolutely loaded. And Larry Bird, along with Steph, LaMarcus, and the rest of the Bulls take home their first NBA title, while Mark Cuban again contemplates hiring an FBI agent to investigate the league's officiating. In the 2011 draft, the Bucks now pick 1st, which means, yes, Kyrie Irving now will spend his career in Milwaukee, where he'll spend several a Wisconsin night looking up at the stars and pointing out all of the fake planets. As for the rest of the draft, well, Kemba Walker is now taken by the Pacers, who don't need to trade for George Hill. Don't worry though, Spurs fans, San Antonio still finds a trade partner in Memphis and lands Kawhi Leonard. Before we get to the huge deals in the offseason, the Bulls quietly replace Shaq with an undervalued Tyson Chandler. And now for the real fun. In Charlotte, Chris Paul has had enough and lets it be known that he wants to be traded, which means that the Lakers are now able to swoop in and trade for Paul in a similar deal to the one that was originally vetoed by David Stern. Remember, in this trade, David Stern has no veto power, as the league owned New Orleans in the original deal but has no part in Charlotte's business. And so Chris Paul teams up with Kobe on the Lakers in what will be the 2nd biggest move this summer, because in Orlando, Magic Johnson's contract is up and he is fed up with watching the finals from his couch. And looking at the landscape of the NBA, the Thunder see the Heat with the big three, the Bulls with Bird, Curry, and Aldridge, the Spurs with their new addition of Kawhi, and the Lakers with Chris Paul and Kobe. They know that championship windows can close fast, and with so many of the NBA teams full of superstar talent, they also know that they need to make a move now, which sets up the perfect trade to shake the NBA to its core. The Orlando Magic send Magic Johnson to the Oklahoma City Thunder in a sign and trade in exchange for Mike Conley and a future 1st round pick. This is actually a good amount of value for a team to receive in a sign and trade, but the Thunder aren't complaining. They had their chance to put together a dynasty and they took it, which is why it should be no surprise that in 2012 the Thunder lived up to the hype. KD and Russ established themselves as 2 of the best players in the league. Noah anchors the defense, and Magic, well, all Magic does is average 24 points, 12 assists, and 6 rebounds a night while finishing as the league's MVP in the process. Meanwhile, the Bulls continue their regular season dominance despite Steph Curry's spending most of the year out with injuries, very much mirroring the struggles the original Bulls felt with Derrick Rose this season. These injuries would cost Chicago in the playoffs, as the Bulls were denied a chance to defend their title in the Eastern Conference Finals by the Miami Heat. In the Western Conference, the Thunder roll through every challenger and do not stop when they get to the finals, as LeBron James is denied his first championship by a ridiculously talented OKC Thunder team. Finishing off the year, Kyrie is again named Rookie of the Year, and now let's head over to the 2012 draft, where the Portland Trailblazers now find themselves moving up from the 6th pick to the 1st, which means
The Portland Trailblazers select Anthony Davis.
And so yes, Trailblazers fans, you do not get Damian Lillard in this draft, but you instead get one of the best young big men the league has ever seen. As for Dame, he ends up on the Bobcats, while Beal is drafted by the Pistons and Drummond pairs up with Blake in Minnesota. After this draft, the Lakers find both of their original additions, Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, playing for the Clippers, as Nash signs with the Clips to start while Rose is hurt and Dwight is content enough with the team's future to not demand a trade. In the 2013 regular season, much like the Bulls in 2012, the Thunder run through the year with an awesome 70 wins in their quest to repeat as NBA champions. However, like the Bulls, an injury to a star cost the Thunder from realizing their full potential, as in the first round of the playoffs, Russ will go down and, well, we'll get to that in a minute. As this season, the Chicago Bulls somehow won up the Thunder and set the NBA record for wins in a season with 73, as Bird, Steph, and LaMarcus continue to dominate, while second-year player Jimmy Butler, the 30th pick in the 2011 draft, begins to emerge as a bright and upcoming talent. Despite the Bulls' historic season though, it is LeBron James who takes home this year's MVP, as LeBron is on an absolute warpath to prove his legacy. Through sheer horrible luck, LeBron has seen MVP awards and championship trophies that should have been his slip out of his fingertips due to two of the top 10 players in NBA history joining the league the year after him, while creating super teams in the process. It is because of that last part, the fact that the Chicago Bulls are a super team, that makes LeBron's 2013 season that much more impressive. Because in the 2013 Eastern Conference Finals, the Heat are again met by the Chicago Bulls, but this time, LeBron puts up an all-time historic performance. He finishes the series with averages of 32 points, 12 assists, and 13 rebounds, while leading the Heat to a Game 7 upset in Chicago, a game that sees him score the last 10 points and quiets all of his doubters. On the other side of the bracket, with the loss of Russ and the emergence of Kawhi Leonard, Greg Popovich is able to work his magic and grind out a 7-game victory over OKC, setting up the exact same finals matchup we saw in the original 2013 season. And just like those finals, the Heat again emerge victorious, giving LeBron the championship trophy he has coveted for so long. In the 2013 draft, there are some notable changes, but nothing too huge to get into. As for the rest of the offseason, well, the Rockets lose out on Dwight as he chooses to stay and bet on Derrick Rose's return to MVP form, which will turn out about as good as anyone who bet on the Falcons this year. Meanwhile, Chris Paul has had a terrible tenure with the Lakers and has pretty much wasted his prime thus far. So he leaves LA to join Melo and Kevin Love on the New York Knicks, which brings us to 2014, where despite the brilliance of Steph Curry, despite the all-star play of Aldridge, and the rise of Jimmy Butler, the Bulls just win 56 games as Larry Bird misses all but 6 games with a horrible injury. And so, for the first time in a long time, the East finds itself with a new top dog, as CP3, Melo, and Love mesh well enough together to lead the New York Knicks to the conference's top record. The Big Apple is beside themselves, as Knicks fans will tell anyone who will listen that it is their year to finally win another NBA championship. These predictions turn out to be delusions, as the Knicks do fall to the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron James, but hey, the Knicks were actually good this year. As for the West, well, the Thunder again put up a 70-plus win season, and Magic Johnson wins his second MVP, as the media points to him for the reason the Thunder are able to get the most out of their ridiculous ridiculous talent. They're not wrong, as Magic finishes the year averaging 22 points, 12 assists, and 6 rebounds, while Durant finishes second in the voting while putting up almost 30 points a game. The most interesting story this year is the newfound dominance of the Golden State Warriors. Golden State, behind John Wall, James Harden, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, wins 60 games and puts themselves in the discussion for future NBA dynasties. These discussions might just be well-founded, as the Warriors defeat the Spurs in the second round of the playoffs before falling to the Thunder in 6 games. And after facing their only real challenge in those playoffs, OKC sweeps the Heat in the NBA Finals, while Russell Westbrook is named the Finals MVP after putting up back-to-back 40-point performances to close out the season. In the 2014 NBA Draft, again, there are some changes, but nothing that will be that important for the rest of this scenario, except for the fact that Andrew Wiggins is taken by the Cavs, but this time he remains with Cleveland, as LeBron no longer chooses to come home with no Kyrie Irving on the roster. And yes, LeBron does not go to Cleveland after an embarrassing sweep in the finals because he needs to go to a championship-ready roster. So he signs with the New York Knicks, giving the Knicks a core of Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, Kevin Love, and LeBron James. Now, up until this point, you may have noticed that a string of terrible luck has left us without a Magic Bird matchup in the NBA Finals. This unfortunate trend continues this season, as Kevin Durant is forced to shut down his year with a foot injury early on. This opens the door for the Golden State Warriors, who continue the trend of NBA super teams dominating the league by winning 71 games with James Harden taking home the MVP. Golden State will manage to reach the NBA Finals, where they will soon play either the Bulls or the Knicks, as this year the Bulls again reach 70 wins after Larry Bird enjoys a nice bounce back year while Steph Curry shows the world that he is now a legitimate NBA superstar. The Knicks, meanwhile, win a solid 60 games despite a significant injury to Carmelo Anthony, as LeBron and Chris Paul click the second they join forces on the court. With the loss of Melo, though, and the loss of Kevin Love in the playoffs, the Knicks proved to be no match for Chicago, and so Chicago wins the 2015 title in 6 games, as Jimmy Butler, fresh off his first All-Star appearance, proves to be the team's X-Factor and has an incredible series. Which leads us to the last draft we'll cover. The Nuggets end up with the first pick, and yup, Cat will pair with Nikola Jokic to create a truly dangerous young big man duo. This means the Sixers get Porzingis with pick number 4. Finishing off this draft, Justice Winslow ends up in Houston, and the Pelicans get Miles Turner. And so, let's just fast forward past the 2016 regular season and jump straight into the conference finals. Yet again, LeBron and Bird face off in a huge playoff series, and yet again, Bird comes out on top. Though this time, it has less to do with his play and more to do with the play of 2016 MVP Steph Curry, as due to an injury to Chris Paul early in the playoffs, the Knicks have no match for Curry's unlimited range and can't help but watch as 3 after 3 drops through the net. As for the Western Conference Finals, well, for the first time in his career, Magic has the chance to face Larry Bird to decide who will win the NBA championship, and he does not let that opportunity pass him by. The Thunder dispatch the Warriors in 7 hard-fought games, giving us what we've all been waiting for: a Bird vs. Magic NBA championship series. And through the first 6 games of this series, the teams trade blows in what really is a battle of the game's brightest stars, which leads us to an epic Game 7 matchup. With 1 minute left, the Thunder run down the clock and Magic drives to the basket for a tough 2 points. Now on offense, the Bulls try to get Steph Curry free with a pick and roll, but he's denied and is forced to swing the ball to Larry Legend. With the shot clock running down, Larry pump fakes, takes 1 dribble, and sinks a game-tying shot with 14 seconds left. With the game on the line, Durant hustles down the court, spots an open Westbrook, and then Larry Bird comes out of nowhere to make an incredible steal. With just seconds remaining, Bird finds a streaking Curry running up the court, and at the buzzer, the Bulls win the 2016 NBA championship, giving Larry Bird his 3rd overall NBA title. For his heroic efforts, the legend himself is named the 2016 Finals MVP. And yeah, Magic and Bird did not have as much success in this scenario than they did in the 80s. But that's what happens when you drop in 2 stars into a random era of basketball. The fact that they were able to do so well, winning 5 championships and 4 MVP, while facing off against the Lakers with Kobe, the Spurs Spurs with Duncan, the Cavs, Heat, and Knicks with LeBron. I mean, that just goes to show you just how talented Magic and Bird were. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this what if. I know I did like making it, maybe around hour 70, you know, that started to wane, but it was definitely cool. Definitely just love doing these. If you're still here, thank you so much for your support. You're awesome, and as always, have an awesome day, and cue that music.